The sun rose quietly over Windsor Castle, but the air felt heavier than usual. Something about the day was different. Kate Middleton felt it the moment she opened her eyes. A strange feeling sat in her chest, quiet weight she couldn't explain. She had been to many royal events, but this one felt more personal, more emotional. She didn't know why yet. She just knew today would stay with her for the rest of her life. She dressed carefully. A simple navy blue dress, neat and respectful. Nothing too fancy. Kate wanted all attention to stay on the real purpose of the day. Today was a memorial. A day to honor soldiers who had died in recent wars. Young men and women who had given their lives for the country. It wasn't just another royal duty. It was something deeper. As she walked through the stone halls of the castle, her heels clicked against the floor. The sound echoed softly, the only noise in the quiet space. Everything around her felt still, as if the building itself knew the importance of what was coming. The air was cool. She could feel the cold stone under her fingers when she lightly touched the wall for support in the large hall. Other members of the royal family stood together. But the usual smiles and polite talks were gone. No laughter, no whispering. Calm, serious faces. Prince William stood near the window, speaking with King Charles. His back was straight, his eyes thoughtful. He had served in the military. He understood what today meant. Kate looked at him and felt thankful he was beside her. The Queen sat near the fireplace in her usual chair. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap. Her posture was still perfect, even in her old age. When Kate walked over, their eyes met. The Queen gave her a small nod, soft gesture, but full of meaning. It was like she knew what Kate was feeling without needing to ask. Kate was handed a folder by a royal aide. Inside were the names of the soldiers being honored. She sat down and began reading. John Matthews, 23, Sarah Thompson, 28, Alan Rhodes, 31. Each name came with a short sentence. Some had children. Some were newly married. Some had parents still waiting for them at home. But none of them would return. As Kate turned the pages, her eyes filled with tears. These were not just names. These were people. People who had laughed, dreamed, and loved. People who had chosen to serve and had given everything. She thought about her own children, safe at home in bed. George, Charlotte, Louis, she imagined. What it would be like if they had to grow up without their father. The thought hit her hard. Her chest tightened. Soon it was time to leave. The royal cars waited outside. Kate sat quietly during the drive to Westminster Abbey, holding the folder. Close. Outside the window, the streets of London were busy. People walked their dogs, went shopping, hurried to work. Most of them didn't know about the ceremony happening today. But everything they enjoyed, peace, safety, freedom, was possible because of the people whose names Kate carried in that folder. When the cars reached Westminster Abbey, the crowd outside was large. People held small flags and wore poppies. Some wore uniforms, some held flowers. Some just stood in silence, hands folded in front of them. Kate stepped out of the car and looked at them. She could see in their faces that this day mattered to them, not because of the royal presence, but because of who they had come to remember. The Abbey looked beautiful in the morning light. The tall stone walls stood proud, full of history. Kate had been here before on her wedding day. But today, the place felt different. The air was thicker, the silence deeper. This was not a day for celebration. It was a day for grief and respect. Inside the Abbey, hundreds of people sat in silence. Even children were quiet. The stained glass windows let in soft-colored light. Kate walked slowly down the center aisle, past rows of soldiers, families, and officials. She wasn't thinking about how she looked or who was watching. Her mind was still on the names in her folder. Her heart was full. She took her seat near the front. The music started. A soft hymn filled the air. Kate listened to the words but didn't try to sing. Her throat was too tight. Her eyes found a young widow in the third row. The woman held the hand of a small boy. Her face was strong, but her eyes were full of pain. Kate looked at her and felt a deep connection. One mother to another. She didn't know it then, but in just a few moments, she would do something so quiet and so simple that it would touch everyone in that ancient church, even the Queen. And it would start with the small act of lowering her head. The moment Kate stepped deeper into Westminster Abbey, the silence wrapped around her like a blanket. Hundreds of people sat quietly in the ancient wooden pews, but it was so still that even the softest sound would feel too loud. The air was thick with emotion. It was not just sadness, it was respect. It was history. It was something that couldn't be seen but was felt in every breath. Every heartbeat. Joe, she looked up at the tall stained glass windows where sunlight painted gentle colors across the stone floor. The same floor where kings had walked, where queens had been crowned, where soldiers were now being remembered. Kate moved down the center aisle slowly, almost like she was walking through time itself. Every step she took felt heavy, not from the dress she wore, but from the weight of the moment. As she reached the front, she sat beside Prince William. His eyes were on the altar, serious and focused. He had served in the military and knew what it meant to lose people you stood beside. Kate glanced at him for a second. His presence calmed her. His quiet strength made her feel steady, like a tree standing tall even during a storm. The service began with the entrance of the clergy. Their robes brushed softly against the floor as they walked in a slow, careful line. At the front was the Archbishop of Canterbury, followed by military chaplains from different branches of the armed forces. Their expressions were firm, but their eyes told the truth. They had seen grief up close. They had comforted families. They had prayed over flag-covered coffins. The music started again. A choir sang a hymn that echoed off the high stone walls. The melody was soft and full of sorrow. It was the kind of song that stayed with you even after it ended. Kate tried to sing, but her voice caught in her throat. She looked around the abbey and saw many others the same. Grown men with tears in their eyes. Mothers holding folded flags in their laps. Children sitting too quietly, their young faces full of confusion and pain. Then came the part of the ceremony that no one was fully prepared for. The names. The Archbishop stepped forward and spoke in a clear voice. Today we remember those who gave their lives in service to their country. Then a senior military officer, a man with gray hair and rows of medals across his chest, approached a second lectern. He held a sheet of paper. As he unfolded it, his hands trembled. These were names he had once called during roll call. Now he was calling them for the last time. He began to read, one by one. The names of fallen soldiers filled the abbey. Each name felt like a drumbeat in Kate's heart. John Matthews, Sarah Thompson, Daniel Young. Kate lowered her eyes. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers gently folded. She had read those names earlier, but hearing them now spoken aloud in this sacred place was something different. It was real. It was final. Each name was a person, a child, a spouse, a sibling, a friend. Without thinking, Kate lowered her head. She didn't do it for the cameras. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because it felt right. It was the only thing she could do. A small act to honor something far too big for words. And something unexpected happened. The moment her head bowed, the entire abbey changed. The silence deepened. The mood shifted. Quiet wave of emotion spread through the people present. Across the rows of pews, others began to lower their heads too. First a mother, then a soldier, then a whole row of family members. Even the choir paused, their voices fading into stillness. The Queen looked over at Kate. Her eyes, usually calm and unreadable, held something different now. She didn't move, but she watched Kate closely. Then, almost like she understood what was happening more deeply than anyone else, the Queen gave this softest nod. A quiet approval. A silent blessing. It lasted only a few seconds. But it felt like a lifetime. When Kate finally raised her head again, everything around her seemed changed. Not visibly, but spiritually. She had done something simple. But in that one small act, she had reached people's hearts in a way few ever could. She had shown that sometimes silence can speak louder than any speech. That a bowed head can carry more weight than any crown. And though she didn't know it yet, that one moment would echo far beyond the walls of Westminster Abbey. Sometimes one quiet action can leave a deeper mark than 100 loud speeches. That's what happened in Westminster Abbey that morning. When Kate lowered her head in silent respect, she didn't realize she was starting something that would move an entire nation. It was not planned. It was not part of any royal schedule. But it became the moment everyone remembered. As Kate slowly lifted her head again, she noticed the stillness in the room. The names of the fallen were still being read one by one, like gentle waves touching the walls of the ancient church. But now something had changed. The mood was no longer just formal or official. It had become personal. She looked around the abbey and saw that many people had followed her lead. Heads had been bowed, eyes were still moist. Even those who had spent years in service, trained to hide emotion, were now showing it. Soldiers in uniform wiped their eyes quietly. Elderly parents clutched folded flags closer to their chests. The young widow Kate had noticed earlier now had tears rolling freely down her cheeks. Her small son was no longer fidgeting. He just held tightly onto her hand, sensing something big had just happened. Kate's own heart felt heavy, but full. She hadn't expected to feel this much. She had thought her royal training would help her keep emotions hidden. But no training could prepare her for this kind of human connection. She wasn't just a duchess or a princess in that moment. She was a mother, a wife, person honoring the lives of others. The queen was still looking at her. Their eyes met again. And this time there was something deep in the queen's gaze. It wasn't surprise or judgment. It was understanding, quiet, kind of approval. She had lived through wars. She had met thousands of grieving families. She had felt the cost of duty. And now, seeing Kate respond from the heart knot, from the rules, seemed to touch something inside her. The cameras around the abbey had captured the moment. But many photographers had paused. It felt wrong to snap pictures during such sacred silence. Some had put their cameras down completely, realizing that no photo could truly capture the emotion in the room. What had just happened wasn't for headlines. It was for the hearts of the people. As the service continued, the choir began another hymn. This time, the voices were stronger. It was as if the moment of shared silence had given everyone the strength to sing again. Kate listened closely to the words. They spoke of peace, of sacrifice, of never forgetting. And now those words meant more than ever. After the hymn, a military chaplain stepped forward to speak. His voice was low but firm. He didn't talk about politics or war. He spoke about love. About how every soldier being honored had once been someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's partner. He reminded everyone that behind each uniform was a full life, with hopes and dreams and laughter. Kate felt her eyes fill again. She thought of the names she had read earlier in the car. She could still remember some of them. She would probably never forget them. She reached for Prince William's hand again. He gently took hers without looking down, but she felt the squeeze. It said everything. I'm here. I understand. You did something good. As they sat together, Kate realized something important. Her role in the royal family was not just about shaking hands or giving speeches. It was about moments like this. Moments when the crown could help carry the weight of grief. When presence could bring comfort. When quiet respect could speak more loudly than words. She looked around at the others. In the abbey once more, there were people from all walks of life, young and old, rich and poor, soldiers and civilians. But in that moment, they were all the same. They were all people honoring someone they had lost or someone they were thankful. They had never needed to lose. The final prayer was about to begin. People began to stand. Kate rose with them, her heart still full of emotion. The Queen stood slowly as well, but with her usual grace. The two women exchanged another glance, quiet but meaningful. They didn't need to speak. What had happened was already clear. Before the prayer started, Kate turned her head slightly and looked at the crowd behind her. Some were still wiping tears. Some stood tall with pride. Others simply looked peaceful, changed by what they had witnessed. In a ceremony meant to honor the fallen, Kate had unknowingly created a new kind of memory. A moment of truth, a reminder that behind the titles, the uniforms, and the traditions, everyone was simply human, and sometimes the smallest gestures are the ones that echo the loudest. Sometimes history changes not with a speech, but with silence. That day, inside the walls of Westminster Abbey, a quiet moment became something far greater than anyone had planned. Kate Middleton had only lowered her head to honor fallen soldiers. But what happened after that would be remembered across the world. The final prayer began. The voices of the clergy echoed gently through the high stone walls. People stood shoulder to shoulder. Their eyes were closed, hands held, heads lowered. Even young children who didn't fully understand the meaning of the day stood still, as if they could feel that something sacred was happening. When the prayer ended, silence remained for a few seconds longer. It wasn't an awkward pause. Was something deeper? A moment everyone wished to hold on to just a little longer. Then came the closing hymn. The choir began to sing again, their voices stronger than before. The words spoke of courage, honor, and peace. The music filled the abbey like a warm light. Kate listened quietly, her heart still full from everything she had witnessed. As the final note faded, the crowd remained still. There was no rush to leave, no movement, only quiet. It was as if the moment needed to settle into their hearts before they could take the next step. Slowly, the Queen turned to exit. Her movements were slow but sure, her face calm but her eyes thoughtful. She gave small nods to people she passed, not because of protocol, but because she understood how much it meant to them. Kate and William followed behind her. They walked toward the great wooden doors. People began to speak softly. Some whispered thanks. Some simply placed a hand over their heart. Others gave small, respectful bows. Then something surprising happened. One by one, members of the crowd came up to Kate, not to ask for photos, not to praise her title, but to thank her for her simple act. A young man wearing a military badge looked her in the eyes and said, "Thank you. You didn't just show up. You felt it." An older woman with gray hair and tired eyes took Kate's hand in both of hers and said, "My son died 3 years ago. Today, for the first time, I felt like he was truly seen." Kate didn't know what to say. Her voice failed her. So, she did the only thing that felt right. She squeezed the woman's hand and nodded. Sometimes, no words were needed. Prince William looked over, his face soft with pride. He had always admired Kate's grace in public, but this was different. This wasn't about royal duty or speeches. This was about heart, about being human in front of other humans. When they stepped outside into the cool autumn air, the crowd lining the streets was still there. The silence had changed into a soft, respectful quiet. People didn't wave or cheer. They just stood, many with hands folded or holding small flowers. The mood was still serious, but somehow lighter, as if the shared grief had also become shared. Strength. As Kate got into the car, she held the folder of names close to her chest. Those names, John Matthews, Sarah Thompson, and so many others, were now written on her heart. They were no longer just part of a ceremony. They were real people, and she had felt their stories deeply. That night, after returning home, Kate sat by the window in silence. The palace was quiet. Her children were asleep upstairs. Prince William had gone to check on them. Kate looked up at the stars and thought about all the people she had met, the folded flags, the trembling voices, the quiet tears. She understood. Now that her place in the royal family was not just about wearing crowns or smiling for cameras, it was about being a part of people's lives in their most important moments. Birth, joy, sorrow, grief. And on days like today, a remembrance. Over. The next few days, news of Kate's gesture spread across the country and beyond. Newspapers showed the photo of her bowed head. Headlines read, "The moment that moved a nation." But Kate didn't focus on the media. What mattered more were the letters she received. From widows, from veterans, from children. They thanked her not for being a royal, but for being real. Years later, when people asked Kate about that day, she would always say the same thing. It was never about me. It was about them, the brave men and women who gave everything. I just bowed my head. They gave their lives. And that one quiet moment, born from pure respect, would stay in the hearts of those who saw it forever.